Friendship is Monster, Movie Night. Twilight double-checked and triple-checked her bag as she stood at the gates of Everfree Estates. Sunscreen? Check. Water bottle? Check. Wallet? Check. As she went through the objects she had brought along, just in case they were needed, Twilight knew they were already in there. She had checked her bag at least 30 times by now. It was just that doing this helped settle her nerves. Twilight blinked as she produced a dog whistle, one she had gotten long ago to train Spike. So that's where it's been. She hadn't really needed it since it turned out her little pup was actually very intelligent. Seeing as how there was no place to put it, she dropped it back into her bag. Really need to clean this thing out. When she had told her mom a few days ago she was going to hang out with a few friends, Twilight's mother had practically gone to break out some champagne. It had been a while since Twilight had hung out with, well, anyone. In fact, besides the playdates her mother would set her up on as a child, she hadn't had any friends in general. Twilight Velvet had eagerly allowed her daughter to go. However, in Velvet's rush of excitement, Twilight had neglected to tell her where she was going, or who her new friends were. She wasn't sure if her mother would let her go if she knew Mid-Camelot was her destination. Their safe and secure little subdivision was a far cry from the wild and crowded skyscrapers. Even so, Twilight was determined to go and meet Sunset. Even if it didn't work out between them and her possible new friends, it would still be an adventure. Only... Twilight checked her bag's contents for the 31st time. In order to get to the theater, she needed to at first leave Everfree Estates, which she had never done before on her own, then take the bus, which she had looked over beforehand, but still wasn't sure of. Twilight rocketed back on her heels quietly, thinking over her options. Both her parents were out, so she couldn't ask for a ride now. She could just send Sunset a message online, saying she couldn't come, but truth be told, it had been nice talking to other girls. She hadn't realized how much she missed talking to other nice people until Sunset had come and gone. Well, you don't discover new things inside your comfort zone. Walking to the first obstacle, Twilight pulled out her photo ID from her wallet, handing it to the guard. The fortified walls of Everfree Estate were made of 6 stone and iron bars, all leading to various guard stations as the only legal exits and entrances for both cars and pedestrians. The man looked over her card before typing into his computer. "All by yourself today, Miss Sparkle?" he asked curiously. Yes, meeting some friends," Twilight said, watching as she looked over the monitor before nodding, handing her ID back to her. "Well, have fun and be careful out there," he said, pulling his newspaper back up, ignoring her once more. "Okay," Twilight said, walking through the stone arches and out onto the sidewalk of the outside world. She looked up and down the street, seeing Camelot clearly in the distance, the soft sound of cars honking and police sirens echoing from the metropolis. It wasn't so far that Twilight couldn't walk, but the bus was a far easier and faster solution. Sitting down at the stop, Twilight tapped her feet in a jittery fashion. She checked her bag for the 32nd time, pulling out her phone to look at the time. The movie was in an hour, more than enough time for the bus to get there, and for her to wait for Sunset and the other girls. The other girls. Twilight had no clue who they were, or what they were. Sunset mentioned Rainbow Dash and Applejack before, though she only really knew about Applejack. Sunset said she was a plant person, but hadn't given him a specific name. She mentioned Applejack had a brother and sister, but that was the extent of her knowledge. Twilight just hoped she didn't screw up with some kind of social taboo she didn't know about. Probably should have done more research. Twilight went for her bag again, only to pause when the rumbling of a bus came up the street. The large vehicle rolled to a stop before her, doors opening. After checking it was the right number, Twilight clambered on, dropping her coins into the slot and smiling up at the driver. The man smiled back, waving a fin back at her? She stared at it before she could catch herself, and quickly looked back at him with an apologetic smile and hurried towards the seating. Right, this was Mid-Camelot now. She'd never been around monsters for an extended period of time. Between being a homebody in an Everfree Estate and being bused to a private school, a school attended only by human children, Twilight couldn't get out much. Of course, when she saw the seating area, she had to pause and grip the side rail. In the seats were a wide variety of creatures, ranging from a large blob-looking monster at the far back, taking up 3 seats by itself, to a beautiful fairy with bright pink translucent wings, adored in heavy, hard-cored goth clothing. A minotaur in a business suit was reading a newspaper, while across from him, a civitar was thrown across a few seats, passed out, and snoring loudly. His 4 cloven hooves splayed out in different directions as a headset played loudly over his ears, and his antlers appeared to be stuck in the bars over the backs of the seats. Twilight jolted as the bus started up again, and she quickly slid into a nearby seat. It was far away from everyone else, not to say that was her intention in picking it, at least in the forefront of her mind. As the bus turned and made its way back to the city, Twilight's eyes wandered around again, watching the Goth fairy pull out her phone of her small black purse. The Civitar twitched in his sleep as the music blared loudly from his headset, hooves moving back and forth slightly as if walking in his sleep. The Minotaur looked up from his paper at the sleeping passengers, only to roll his eyes and turn the page. The bus crawled to a stop again. Doors cracked open and a fawn stepped in, holding the hand of her son. She paid her fare as the small boy wandered into the seating area, looking around before staring at Twilight herself. Twilight stared back. The boy cocked his head to one side, then the other, puffing out his cheeks before he came up and sat right beside her. Twilight could only blink at him as the fawn boy stared unflinchingly. His mother was so preoccupied with looking in her purse, she didn't seem to notice her son staring at Twilight. The teen looked around the bus uneasily. Should she move seats? Would that seem racist or something? Looking back down, the boy was still staring. He hummed softly before he looked down her figure to her legs, then back up at her before he whipped out his hand, pointing. Twilight flinched back to keep distance from the kid's hands. She could only fathom what the child would say. Were humans not allowed on this bus or something? She hadn't read that on the website anywhere. The boy, still pointing at her, spoke in a high-pitched warble. "What's wrong with your legs, lady?" Twilight blinked. Pardon? "Your legs! They're all weird and not fuzzy." The boy pointed down at her leg before gesturing to his goat half. "Did ya get a shave or something, Clem?" The woman finally noticed her son's action and took his hands in hers quickly before pulling away. "It's rude to point. I'm just wondering what's wrong with her, Ma," Clem said, using his other hand to point across his body to Twilight. "She don't got no hooves." Twilight heard a soft chuckle and looked across the bus to the Goth fairy, who held a hand to her mouth and was smiling behind it, amused by the exchange before her. "Clem," the woman hissed, pulling her son closer. "She's human, not a fawn like us. They don't have hooves." "Why?" The woman picked her son up in her arms and deposited him on a seat on the other side swiftly. She frowned down at him and turned back to Twilight. "I'm so sorry, miss." It's fine," Twilight said, watching the mother scold her son quietly. The bus rolled along quietly, getting closer and closer to the inner city. With each stop, more people getting on and off. The Goth fairy got off at the clubbing district, standing up and putting her things away before lifting a few inches in the air and gliding off the bus. Then in a more historical area, an Anubis-style Cyclops woman got on. She had a book bag stuffed with tomes on her arms and glasses on her snout. In the business area, the Minotaur and Blob creature stood and left, the former leaving a trail of goo in its wake. Clem tried to crawl off his seat to investigate, but his mother held the 4-year-old son in his seat. Pouting, the boy stood up and looked out the window as the bus started up again. All in all, it was a normal bus ride, if not a bit quieter than Twilight's school bus. Everyone was so busy with their own lives they didn't seem to care about the going-ons around them. With that, though, the Civitar woke groggily, trying to sit up in his seat before grunting, realizing his antlers were caught. Detailing himself, he looked out the window blandly, pulling off his headset. With the next stop, he went to leave. Twilight looked down at her phone again, checking the time. She still had a half hour before beep. The occupants looked up to see the Civitar standing in the middle of the bus, legs almost buckled as he tried to keep balance on the slimy floor. He reached out for the nearby pole and tugged himself to the drier floor. With a little hop, he left the bus, pausing to give himself a little shake and ride his saddlebag on his lower deer back before moving on. Clem laughed as the bus doors creaked again, his mother hissing him, though she too had a smile on her face. The bus rode up to Twilight's stop, though she had to pause for an elderly couple, both ogres, who came on before her. As she stepped out and watched the bus drive away, she was startled momentarily by the height of the buildings. Looking up at them, she suddenly felt a little uneasy. She squeaked when someone bumped into her, and turning, found a woman wearing sunglasses frowning at her. "Watch it, you stupid piece of stock!" She growled, and her hair, which now that Twilight looked at it, was actually made of snakes, looked up at her and hissed angrily. "Sorry," Twilight whimpered as the Gorgon walked off in a huff. The human girl quickly made her way to the theater before slumping against the side of the entrance. Well, beside that recent encounter, everything was going fine thus far. Now all she needed to do was look for Sunset. Looking around, the girl tried to see if she could spot the red-haired vampire in the crowd, but in the midst of the sea of creatures of varying shapes and sizes, she couldn't make anyone out. Did she get the wrong theater? Maybe Sunset had been messing with her and wasn't actually coming. It wouldn't be the first time that happened. Twilight checked her bag for the 33rd time. Shuffling around her wallet and phone, Twilight sighed. Why would anything change just because these girls were new? Anyone could see what a nerd she was, the last time she had been invited out. Uh-oh. Twilight swallowed tightly. She deeply hoped that wasn't the case. Twilight didn't want to be humiliated again and have it posted all over the web. maybe she could just leave? Twilight pulled out her phone thoughtfully. Get out. Yeah, get out before these girls had a chance to even— Hey! Ah! Twilight yelped, fumbling to catch her phone before it fell out of her hand to the ground. However, there was a flash of yellow before the device was held out to her. Whoops, sorry Twilight, Sunset said, placing the phone back into her open palm with a sheepish smile. I didn't mean to scare you like that. Twilight pushed her glasses back up to her nose and poked her phone. It's fine. I'm fine. She smiled back at Sunset with a shrug. So, hey. Yeah, hey. Good to see you again. In public, without either of our lives in danger or anything, Sunset said airily, waving her hand in the air. She smiled a bit when Twilight laughed. Yes, it is, Twilight nodded. Yeah, but hey, Sunset said, pointing behind herself. A few of my friends are right over there. Come on, I'll introduce you. Sunset took Twilight's hand and pulled her across the crowded entrance toward the area where the posters were displayed. As she drew closer, Twilight could see they were narrowing in on two girls standing before a particular movie poster. One girl was sky blue with rainbow hair. She had wings for arms with hands on each end, feathers forming out starting at her wrists and linking along to her back. Her feet were that of a bird's talons, clacking on the ground with sharp scratching as she seemed to jump around in a rather animated fashion, gesturing wildly as she told a tale to the girl in the cowboy hat. The other girl was seemingly made of plants. Some of her skin looked similar to that of a tree bark, and her hair was made of vines and leaves dotted with small yellow flowers all over her foliage, that ended up in a tied, braided-looking ponytail. That might be Applejack. The other could be Rainbow Dash. As they got closer, the plant girl looked up, smiling at Sunset, and then to Twilight with a curious expression, though the smile never dropped. The Harpy noticed her friend's inattention before turning around herself. Hey, Sunset, the Feather Girl said, looking at her friend before turning to Twilight. Is this her? Yep, my hero, Sunset smiled, bringing Twilight forward. Twilight, this is Rainbow Dash and Applejack. She gestured for effect. Guys, this is Twilight Sparkle. Well, howdy, Applejack said. Nice to meet ya. Well, thanks. It's nice to meet you too. Eep! Twilight yelped when Rainbow Dash stepped closer, cocking her head from side to side quizzically. She was squinting down at Twilight, as her talons gave her just enough height advantage to do so. Well, actually, Twilight was the shortest one here, but... So you saved Sunset, huh? Rainbow asked, cocking her brow and had her head tilted to one side. Yes, Twilight mumbled, ducking her head into her shoulder when Rainbow came a bit closer, neck craned to look down at her more than she already was. Twilight's eyes darted to Sunset and Applejack swiftly, but both girls were just standing nearby. Applejack looked bored again, rolling her eyes, and Sunset had a bemused smirk on, hands on her hips as she watched. When she caught Twilight's eye, Sunset made a slow motion of bringing her hands up to her chest, interlocking them, bringing her shoulders in close. Her body language spelled out a scene of nervousness her face didn't match. Subconsciously, Twilight echoed this motion before looking back up. Rainbow was still scrutinizing her, eyes narrowed. There were a few tense moments where Twilight actually felt like turning around and booking it, before Rainbow blew a red strand of hair from her face and smiled slightly, stepping back. That's pretty cool, Rainbow said, dusting her hands off her shirt and shrugging a bit. Not super amazing cool, but pretty cool. Twilight was frozen in place, eyes darting left, then right, before swallowing. Thank you? There was a sigh before Applejack came over to playfully punch Rainbow on the shoulder, who chirped in surprise at the motion. Alright, Rainbow, not strutting around. What were you going on about before? Right, the game last night. Rainbow smiled, and turned to the farmer again, wings fluttering slightly. So I was saying that Speed Demon was way out of bounds, but the ref just let it go! Twilight was still frozen as she watched Rainbow ruffle herself into another tizzy over the plays of a sporting event. Well, she wasn't until Sunset bumped her with her hip, making Twilight twitch. You okay? Sunset asked, smiling, if not softly. Yeah. She was just asserting herself, nothing to worry about. Twilight blinked, looking back at Sunset. Asserting herself? Some monster species do it, specifically if they're known for living in large groups. Sunset explained, swatting her hands in a dismissive motion. But whenever a new person is introduced, it kinda shuffles up the dynamic. Once they sort out who goes where, it all goes back to normal, usually in less than a few minutes. Establishing hierarchy? Twilight thought. Fascinating. So, Twilight asked, stepping closer to Sunset. She was just checking to see if I was trying to go above her in the pecking order? Kind of. She was also just testing to see if you have any edge to you. Oh, I see. Twilight nervously fidgeted. So, where do I rank? Bottom. Sunset laughed when Twilight flinched. Nah, don't worry about it. She and only two of my other friends do this kind of stuff. There's not really any bottom rank. In fact, it's mostly just subconscious when meeting new people. Just don't assert yourself over them and boom, done. Twilight cocked her head. Well, okay. If there's no bottom, then who's on top? Changes. Like I said, it's not really noticeable. Nobody will get mad if you suggest an activity to do, or if you don't want to do something. Most problems happen when you single each other out or there's some outside offense. Sunset shook her head. Just don't worry about it. All you need to do is to not act defiant when first introduced. Easy enough, Twilight thought. So, are we going to see the movie? Twilight asked, curling her fingers through her hair. Not quite yet, Sunset explained. We're still waiting on 3 more people. Oh, okay, Twilight said, looking back to all the movie posters. So, what movie are we seeing? Well, Sunset rubbed the back of her head. Applejack, what's the movie again? Applejack jerked out the dull expression she was using to humor Rainbow's ranting. Huh? The movie, Sunset repeated. What movie are we seeing again? Movie? We were, seeing... Applejack wrinkled her hands. What? Rainbow jumped between them. You don't remember? I've been waiting to see this movie to come out for months. How could you forget? Well, you see... Applejack puttered off incoherently, a bored look on her face. We just don't, When Rainbow turned to see Sunset, the vampire shrugged. Ugh! Rainbow groaned, slumping her shoulders and throwing her head back. Once she righted herself, she crossed her arms. We're watching Nightmare Moon 2. Attack of the Tantabus? Oh, right, that movie, Sunset said, looking around nervously. Loved the first one. Rainbow squinted at her with a scowl. She leaned in closer to Sunset's side. What was the plot of the first movie? A banished demon princess returns from her imprisonment in the moon to bathe the earth in eternal darkness. However, she was defeated by 16 demon hunters who then purified her evil so she could return to her help her kingdom? Princessdom? Twilight paused, pulling out her phone. I need to Google that. You've seen the first one? Rainbow shouted as she came close to Twilight excitedly. I couldn't get anyone to see it in theaters with me besides Shy, as she wasn't too keen. Rainbow shook Twilight. What did you think of it? Rainbow released suddenly, Twilight wobbling before she could find her balance again, and right into her glasses on the bridge of her nose. Well, I thought it was well written. Had good world building and character development. The lore has a nice touch as well as the way to introduce an overall theme, but I think the middle lagged a bit and had a few forced moments, not to mention a kind of anticlimactic end. Of course, it was just the first one, but they didn't know if it would take off anywhere, not to mention the time constraints they had to work with, so I'm a little more forgiving of it. I think it was good, 7 out of 10. Rainbow sighed, crossing her arms again. I guess that's fair. I think it's 10 out of 10, though. Wait, Applejack asked. So, what's this one about? Her thumbs pointing to the poster of the large monster behind it. Well, Twilight said, if I remember right, it's about the demon princess coming to terms with the evil she's done with the help of the demon hunters. That's all I know, though. With an awesome scene where they slay a whole bunch of demons, Rainbow squealed. Wait, slay? Twilight said in confusion, the other girls looking to her quickly. I thought demons were monsters. They are, Sunset said quickly. Some are just feral. Dreamons are little demons that enter the mind and feed off energy there. They just consume, reproduce to consume, etc., etc. Yeah, Rainbow added, like phoenixes or Hydra or Pegasus and unicorns, Sunset smirked. Puh, Applejack put her hand up to laugh behind it. The last 2 ain't the braddest animals almost left off the ark, the cowgirl chuckled. I don't imagine they live long without interference from monsters. Rainbow snickered. Yeah, I remember seeing that video of a Pegasus flying into the plexiglass window. Rainbow swooped her hand around like it was flying in the air, before smacking it against her other hand with a plonk, making a squeaky noise as her hand slowly slid down. She and Applejack laughed loudly, Twilight giggled softly along with them, imagining the video in her mind as Sunset shook her head in bemusement. Twilight didn't have time to cry out when she was tackled to the side. She did, however, lose her breath for a moment as she toppled to the ground, glasses flying off into confusion. While she thankfully hadn't hit her head, she was still trying to regain air when she looked up to see what had slammed into her. Through her blurry vision, all she could see was a black nose and a very large set of teeth. Pinky! Oh my gosh! Whoa there! The teeth seemed to be surrounded by a mass of pink fuzz that painted down her excitedly. It's her! Our soon-to-be new best friend! The teeth and tongue moved like they were speaking, getting closer. This is super exciting! It's not every day you get to meet a new best friend! Not if you hit her with a move that's outlawed in most football games, Rainbow shouted, pulling the pink mask off of Twilight as 2 sets of hands hoisted her to her feet. Twilight was still struggling to breathe as her hands went to her bag. You okay, Twilight? Sunset asked in concern. Hi, Twilight coughed as her hand blindly shuffled through her belongings. Need glasses. She wheezed tightly, still shuffling. Right here, Sugar Cube, Applejack said, offering them in her sights. Thankfully, however, Twilight's hands finally found the familiar shape of her inhaler. She took a few puffs before accepting the offering. Thanks, Twilight said, putting them on, taking a deep breath. Are you okay? Sunset asked, repeated. Fine, just asthma. Get the wind knocked out of me pretty easily, Twilight explained, putting the inhaler away sheepishly. She looked over to Rainbow Dash and twitched at the large, unmistakable, pink wolf seated beside the heartbeat. It was whimpering, hunched over in a sad position like it was being scolded for digging holes in the backyard. I'm sorry. The wolf stood up, tail wagging a bit. Twilight blinked in confusion when she realized it was the wolf who was talking. I was just super excited to see you, cause Sunset told us about you, and I saw you on Facebook, and I read the post you made, and I wanted to be your friend so badly that I just couldn't think about what I was doing, cause it caused me to shh, Applejack said, stepping over to the wolf. You're rambling a bit there, hun. Twilight, still processing, opened and closed her mouth before sputtering, it's fine. Yay! The wolf jumped up, tail going 90 miles an hour when, before Twilight's very eyes, its shape shifted. It happened so fast Twilight nearly missed it, but less than a moment later, a pink girl stood where the wolf once had. There wasn't much of a difference from the human about her, save for the still wagging tails, ears, and sharp nails. You're gonna have so much fun today, Twilight. I was throwing you a big party for winning that science fair 2 weeks ago, and a welcome to our friend circle party. Wait, what? Twilight said, shaking her head slightly. Oh, how did you know about the science fair? Your mom posted it about a Facebook page. And she's your friend on Facebook, so I basically found her through you and read her post, the girl laughed. Easy peasy. Twilight stared at the girl as she plucked out a very large date planner from her hair and pulled out a pen. Let's plan the party after everyone's done being groundier, so a month? Twilight gaped as Sunset smiled next to her. Twilight Sparkle, Pinkie Pie, the werewolf. Yep. Pinkie smiled as she placed the ledger away, bouncing in place. And it is super fantastic ultra to meet you. I love meeting new people. Love it. The girl began running around excitedly, transforming between a wolf and a human at whim. You get used to her excitement, Rainbow said. Just not her, Sunset added, erotic nature. Well, dang, Pinkie, where are the other girls? Applejack said, catching the wolf girl's attention for a moment. It's not like Rarity you'd be late for anything unless it's fashionable. Oh, they're right behind me, Pinkie explained, morphing back into a human with a small hop. We carpooled, only when I spelt you guys, I got really excited and raced ahead of them. And raced you did, darling. Turning, Twilight watched as 2 more girls came to the entrance of the cinema, both rather graceful and elegant looking, though one was hiding behind the other. At the forefront was a girl with curly purple tresses. She had a horn coming out the top of her head that was long and slim. Where her feet should be, 2 horse hooves stood, though they were dainty and posed with a small ruffling of fur stocking. Behind her was a lion-like tail with purple frills at the end, and her ears were more like that of a horse's. Twilight, this is no need, Sunset, Rarity spoke, stepping forward slightly to offer Twilight her hand. Rarity at your service, dear. I'm a unicorn dryad, a high school student, and an aspiring fashion designer. Lovely to meet you. Twilight stared at the hand for a moment before moving forward to take it. Likewise, Twilight Sparkle, human and, also in high school? Rarity's grip was tight. Not enough to hurt, but Twilight couldn't help but sweat a little. The Dryad stepped forward too, stiffening her proximity before pulling back and letting her go. When Rarity started to circle her, Twilight's head sunk into her shoulder. She had been circled like this before, at school. Popular girls rounding above her like vultures, looking for a weak spot they could pull apart and diving in at the first opening. Rarity, though, circled her more surlily, lips slightly pursed in consideration. When she came back in front of Twilight, she smiled kindly, catching the nerd off guard. That complexion, that hair. You look quite fetching in white or dark blue. Tell me, what's your favorite color? Twilight watched Rarity as the girl circled again. It, changes depending on how I feel and stuff. Rarity paused before cupping her hands together, startling Twilight. Well, that's it then. I must get your measurements. Twilight blushed, hiding her chest slightly. What? She wants to make you an outfit, Sunset supplied, smiling at her. She does it for all of us, Rainbow added, looking a little bored. And you love it. Come on now, you know you do, Rarity said, waving her hand. All the other girls looked at each other before chuckling and nodding. Looks like a petite body. Could be a little pear. Maybe a poof would be nice? Pete, pear, poof? This girl is definitely something. Alright, Rarity. I know you like to make new designs, Applejack suggested with a smirk. But maybe give the girl some breathing room? Rarity looked back to the farm before taking stock at her position and pulling away with a yelp. Oh my, I'm so sorry. My excitement could get away with me, Rarity said, stepping back. It's so rare I get someone new to make clothes for, at least now. Twilight smiled at her as Rarity backed up, until she stumbled into someone. Oh, Fluttershy, I'm so sorry, dear. There was a mumbling behind Rarity, and the star's ears perked up. What was that? I'm afraid I couldn't hear you. Ah! Rainbow grunted before grabbing someone behind Rarity. Come on, Fluttershy. She won't bite or anything. We're gonna miss the movie. It was a fairy girl just like the one she had seen on the bus earlier, only this one was softer and more fragile looking than the goth. She had long pink hair and light yellow skin. Her wings also had a yellow ting, glowing lightly behind her back. Most of her hair was in her face, and she was studying the ground intently, looking up for a moment before catching Twilight's eyes and darting them down again. Go on, Rainbow encouraged, pushing her forward. The girl glided over the ground toward Twilight, still intent on looking everywhere but the girl before her. Hello, the human smiled. My name's Twilight Sparkle. The fairy looked to the ground intently, rubbing her shoulder. I'm the first, Sorry, what was that? Twilight asked, leaning in a little closer. My name's Fluttershy. I didn't quite catch that, Twilight said, trying to smile sympathetically. The girl was basically squealing in a high-pitched tone, clearly anxious. Twilight knew that feeling all too well. Well, She looked behind the fairy, surprised to notice she could see through the girl's slowly fluttering wings to the other. Rainbow was holding her hand in her head. Rarity shook her own, clearly concerned for their friend. Something nudged her side. Looking down, she found Pinky in wolf form, sniffing her clothes. Ooh, ooh, the wolf panted happily. I smell a dog. You have a dog? Well, yes, you have a dog? The fairy girl practically threw herself into Twilight's face. Oh, is he a cute little pug? Or maybe a Great Dane? Oh, he might be a lovely labradoodle. Twilight looked back to Pinky as the fairy rambled. While Twilight knew she had never seen expressions on a wolf's face before, the sly smirk and single raised eyebrow was enough to convince the wolf girl's victory. Ooh, what kind of dog do you have? The fairy asked, bringing Twilight back to her attention. Oh, a mutt actually, Twilight explained. I'm not sure his genetical heritage. He's a small breed though, floppy ears and a short tail. Oh, could be a Cocker Spaniel mix, the fairy said. Did you rescue him? Yes, actually, Twilight said, just about a year ago. Oh, it's so nice when people adopt rescue animals. I volunteer at the shelter right nearby, actually. Fluttershy, Rainbow swooped in, both girls jumping back at the heartbeat. We're gonna miss the previews! Twilight, this is Fluttershy. She's a grand fairy, Sunset explained as they came forward, gesturing to the pink-haired girl. She can be a little shy, but give her some time to warm up to you and you won't have any problems. Or mention you have a pet, Rainbow added. When she spotted Fluttershy's nervous expression, she elbowed. When the fairy looked up, Rainbow had offered her a confident smile that had the fairy straightening her posture a bit. Twilight smiled a bit herself before she blinked, turning to Sunset in confusion. Wait, grand fairy? Twilight shifted her stare back to Fluttershy, who was struggling to get her thoughts in order. But when Rainbow craned her neck to offer the meek girl another smile, and Applejack placed a hand to her shoulder, Fluttershy pushed on. There are many types of fairies. Cousins are also under names like leprechaun and water nymphs, but grand fairies are the most basic and the biggest. There are a lot of tiny ones like pixies and breezies. Wow, that's interesting, Twilight said. I should read more on that. Thanks, Fluttershy. The girl blushed and hid behind her hair again, though a small grin was visible. Read? Rainbow said quickly, looking to the human. You read, like, for fun? Well, yes, not another one, Rainbow groaned. You're an egghead! Twilight flinched. Sunset rolled her eyes before stepping to the human's side. We book-loving folks have to stick together, Dashie. What is there, a built-in egghead radar or something? Rainbow asked. Twilight looked between Pinky and Sunset before speaking. I'll take it you haven't read the books this movie is based off of? This was a book first? Rainbow deadpanned. Twilight shrugged. Well, yeah, but they were called the Nightmare of Equestria series. A little less action-packed and more insightful, the movies are loose adaptations. Wait, I've read those, Sunset said. That's where these movies are from? Huh, maybe I'll look into it after all. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, girls, but if we don't hustle, we're gonna miss the movie altogether. Applejack said, pulling her phone to show the time. No! Rainbow gasped, grabbing Fluttershy's arm and dragging her to the ticket booth. I don't want to miss a second. The rest exchanged glances before following after her, Sunset taking Twilight's arm and leading her towards the ticket booth, hanging back a bit from the group. Enjoying this? So far, I mean. Yeah, Twilight nodded as they got in line. It's nice. Much better than sticking in her basement. As Twilight got to the front of the line, the horned teenager with bat wings in the booth looked at her. One ticket to Nightmare Moon Attack on the Tantibus, please. What kind of theater? The employee asked. Theater? Twilight asked in surprise. Make it 2, medium theaters, Sunset said, leaning in. As the teen got the ticket set, Sunset nudged Twilight. 3 kinds, one for small creatures, one for big, and one for everything else in between. Twilight stared at her and saw it as they were handed their tickets. Twilight's eyes scanned the snack bar, eyes widening at the assortment of candies and treats. Sure, there were popcorn and chocolate bars like the theaters in Everfree Estates, but there were so many other options. Chocolate-covered crickets, rawhide chips, marrow chews, whatever those were, egg-positive gushers, birdseed, hay, and baboon bits? Twilight said, with a curious undertone, holding up the small bag. It's like Slim Jims or Hot Rods, Rainbow said, munching noisily on a large popcorn. Made of monkey meat, that's why it's so expensive. Twilight had to agree when she saw the $10 price tag. Why monkey meat? Wouldn't cow be more cost-effective? She said, looking at the harpy. Rainbow looked from Twilight to the bag in her hand a few times, her crunchy getting slower and slower with every glance, face morphing from neutral to one of slight horror. She swallowed with a painful gulp, coughing a little. No reason, I don't know, Rainbow spoke quickly, snatching the bag from Twilight and throwing it back on the shelf. Just grab your food, okay? Twilight scratched her head in confusion as the harpy turned and scurried to Sunset and Applejack. Sunset had a large drink that she was slurping as Applejack poured some chocolate crickets on her popcorn. The harpy glanced back to Twilight with a look before leaning in to speak with her friends, both of whom listened for a moment as they ate, before freezing with uneasy looks on their faces. Twilight turned back to the snack bar, studying the baboon bits for a moment. She noticed that there was a slogan on the corner. You won't even taste the difference. Wait, this was the original, right? Why the motto? Oh well, Twilight shrugged, pushing it aside for now. She didn't want to miss the movie, so she grabbed her food, watching the teen fawn as they got the snacks together over the counter. Suddenly, there was a hand on her back, and it drifted towards— Ah! Twilight jumped back looking at her. Sorry, Fluttershy whispered, gliding back a bit. I wanted to know if you'd like to split mine. She held up her popcorn bag timidly. Oh, Twilight twitched. Thank you, Fluttershy, but I just ordered some myself. When the fairy examined her shoes, Twilight frowned. It was nice to offer you, though. It sure was. Pinkie hopped up between the two girls, making them both stumble back. Just like it was nice of me to offer to share my bag of tasty treats. The girl held up a bag of rawhide chips in a victorious fashion. Now I'll just open. Ah! The girl tugged the bag every which way, trying to open it, growling a little when it refused to give. Do you, want some help, Pinkie? Fluttershy offered. I know you have trouble with bags like those. Nope. I'm gonna open this one on my own, Pinkie said happily before starting to squeeze, tug, and shake the bag. Concentration spelled out on her face. Okay, Fluttershy mumbled, looking a little unsure as the wolf girl put a corner of the bag under her foot and started to tug it angrily upwards. Twilight watched as well, taking her food as it arrived. Come on, everyone! Show's starting soon, Rarity said, holding her small cup of frozen yogurt and leading everyone to the theater. Aw man, I'm so excited, Rainbow smiled as she followed after. I can't wait for this movie. I agree, Rarity said. The trailer is quite interesting. While I didn't see the first one until Sweetie brought it home on DVD, I think this one will be much more intriguing. The Stride looked down at her yogurt thoughtfully. Of course, Sweetie wanted to come as well, but with a 14A rating and both our parents at work, it was not meant to be. Yeah, Scoots too, Rainbow nodded. What about you, Applejack? Apple Bloom want to come today? Ain't a moment that girl would spend without me if she could, Applejack said. Though I don't know if she's seen the first movie to this one. Who's Apple Bloom? Twilight asked curiously. Oh, my little sister, Applejack said, looking proud. Apple Bloom, Oh, right, Twilight smiled. I think Sunset mentioned her. Applejack smiled and tilted her hat a bit. Yep, she hangs out with Rarity's sister Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo. Scoots is Rainbow's unofficial sister. No blood, but our families are pretty close, Rainbow explained. I practically watched her grow up, so I'm a little attached to the squirt. She laughed when Applejack punched her shoulder. Okay, so maybe a little more. The group piled into the theater, choosing some seats near the back. The trailed in with Pinky leading them down the aisles. She was still struggling with the bag, trying to pull on it half angrily. When Fluttershy reached out to try to help again, the wolf turned away with a pout, shaking her head. Yet, when Fluttershy instead offered some of her popcorn, Pinky smiled excitedly, tail wagging wildly and smacking the person next to her. The Cyclops shot the pink girl a glare, but sighed in defeat when he was ignored and moved the seat over. Twilight chose a seat on the end next to Sunset. The girl smiled at her as the human sat down and offered some of her popcorn. The red hair took a handful before the theater dimmed the lights. There were few advertisements for the theater flashing by as Twilight ate. However, she perked when an ad for bamboo bits came on. It was just a still of an old monster woman eating from an open bag, a smile on her face, the caption below her stating, "It's just like when I was a girl. You can't taste the difference." Twilight looked at Sunset, who was oddly interested in her straw. Blinking, Twilight looked back to the screen to see the upcoming movies that were being advertised now, one of which she gasped to. "They're making a Daring Do movie?" Twilight whisper shouted. "I guess so," Sunset said. "Eggheads." "I think you'd like those books, Rainbow," Sunset said, brow raised at the feather girl. "Only way I read is if I was locked up in a hospital," Rainbow chuckled, rolling her eyes. "And the only way that will happen is if I get hurt, which I don't plan on." "Nobody ever does," Rarity muttered beside Rainbow, mushing her yogurt. "Huh? Nothing, darling." The movie started with the princess reverting to her old ways and fighting the demon hunters again. This was, however, revealed to be a dream, and the monster trapped in the princess's mind, the Tantabus, broke free. The movie only took off from there. Rainbow was practically vibrating in her seat at all the action scenes, and Fluttershy seemed to hide behind Pinky at the scary moments. The wolf just panted happily as the show went on. At some more exciting moments, she would shift a bit, features looking more wolf-like. However, she mostly stayed in her seat, save for a few moments when she would try to open her bag again, with the clicking sound filling the air, though it never lasted long. Halfway through the giant dream sequence, Twilight went to take a drink from her soda, only to sputter and almost cough some out. She looked at the cup before realizing she had picked up Sunset's by mistake. The vampire looked at her as she hacked, and Twilight forced to swallow before smiling sheepishly. "Sorry, wrong cup." "It's fine," Sunset smiled as she whispered back. "It's just so positive." Twilight quickly put the cup down and took her own, slurping a gracious amount to hopefully get rid of the taste. And by the end of the movie, Twilight had to say this was her favorite of the two. The princess character was much more fleshed out, and the ending left her feeling much more satisfied. As the lights came back on, all the girls cheered, while Sunset grumbled to shield her eyes. They all got up and headed down the steps with the rest of the crowd. "Well, that was a great movie. I should have watched the first one," Applejack said as she finished a cricket from her bag and popped it in her mouth. "Reckon Apple Bloom would like it too." "The dream sequences with the demon hunters were funny," Verity smiled and threw out her bowl. "I especially liked that one dream where the fighting girl had to endure those singing flowers. It was so sad when the princess told everyone she couldn't forgive herself," Fluttershy sighed. "I almost cried." "What do you think, Pinky?" Sunset asked, looking around, only to find the Wharf Girl still trying to open her bag of chips. This time, using a whack-a-mole hammer from the arcade. "Oh boy. Well, I'd love to keep hanging out all night with you girls, but I gotta get home before 7. Granny's orders," Applejack sighed. "I'm still technically grounded." "Me too," Rainbow shrugged. "But my dad said I had to be home before the streetlights came on. I'm kinda lucky he still let me come out here to see the movie, and I don't want to piss him off any more than he already is." "Well, I suppose we'll have to meet up again at school," Rarity said, brushing some hair behind her ears. "March break ends after tomorrow. I'm sure we could grab a quick coffee after band practice." "I'm sure Granny wouldn't mind." Applejack smiled. "Well, I guess I should get going," Rainbow sighed. "You can drive me out of the city limits, AJ? I'm still not allowed to fly around here until I get my license." "Of course, I'm already dropping off Sunset," Applejack said, looking suddenly to Twilight. "You got a ride home, Twi?" "Huh? Yes, I took the bus in." "I should have enough for a lift home, too," Twilight said, riding her glasses. "The bus?" Rarity frowned. "Oh my, quite unsanitary. Not to mention, it can be crowded and slightly unsafe at this time of day. All sorts of monsters are heading home from work." "Every Days is right by my house," Applejack said. "I could drop you off." Twilight gave an uneasy smile. That's not really necessary. I'm sure the bus will." "She's not gonna bite, you know," Rainbow grunted, brow raised. Twilight started to sweat a bit at the thought of being alone with these new girls in a car. I need to use the bathroom really quick. Just a sec." Twilight spurted out before speed walking to the restroom, the girls she left behind looking at each other in confusion. Twilight stumbled into the washroom, turning on the sink to splash a small amount of water on her face. While nothing thus far has indicated ill intentions, Twilight was far too used to girls who were good actors. The girls before had seemed nice as well, asking her to join them one night for some fun. That fun, unfortunately, had been at Twilight's expense. They humiliated her and posted photos and videos online of the humiliation for the school to see, on sites only visited by her classmates. Things had quieted down since then, and Twilight hadn't had the courage to tell her parents or teachers what had happened. Every once in a while she ran into the group at school, but she had learned to quickly avoid them. All were popular, and had great influence over the other kids at Crystal Prep. Even those that felt sorry for Twilight stayed back in fear of retribution. So the idea of getting a ride home from a girl she didn't know that well made her chest tighten. Twilight looked at herself in the mirror, sighing, before drying her face off of a paper towel and leaning back on the sink counter, trying to ponder a way out of this. She looked dully to the bathroom area before stopping to look at all the different sizes. There were 2 large stalls that Twilight was sure if she tried to use them, she'd just fall in. The rest were normal size, but a few were small ones that people even shorter than Twilight herself. Then, on a wall, were some stalls that looked like they belonged in a dollhouse. All was set up on shelves and ladders, and when one was opened, a tiny fluttering fairy flew out. She was no bigger than Twilight's hand, and quickly washed her hands on one of the miniature sinks before she headed for the exit. However, she paused to look at Twilight. The fairy cocked her head one side to another before mumbling, yes, Twilight asked wearily. The fairy's voice was squeaky and high-pitched. Nothing, I just, never seen a human up close before. She turned and flew out of the bathroom, wings making a twinkling noise as they sped up. Twilight watched her go before looking back into the mirror. It never stopped surprising her how different Everfree estates in the city were. She saw humans, and nothing but, every single day. Some creatures had only seen photos of human beings due to their withdrawn nature. Twilight? Sunset peeked her head around the doorway as she walked inside. Twilight turned to face her as the vampire looked in concern. Are you feeling okay? Fine. Twilight tried to flash a reassuring smile, though it apparently didn't work as Sunset frowned. Are you sure? You seem nervous. Twilight swallowed tightly. She wasn't sure how to respond to that. How does one say that you're worried you're faking kindness to put them in a false sense of security? Seemed a bit rude. Should she just stick to her story and sneak off to take the bus? It's okay if you're a little uncomfortable, Sunset said, looking a little bit uncertain but thoughtful. I know you lived in Everfree Estates pretty much your whole life. If you're a bit uneasy being around us, then we understand, you know? You must be pretty overwhelmed and— What? Twilight blinked. What do you mean? Sunset paused, looking confused. Well, I mean, you seemed a little uncomfortable in our company, Twilight. You haven't been around monsters a lot, and I know Rainbow kind of started off a little unnerving and— Oh, no, Twilight said quickly, raising her hands. I don't mind any of that. And it was true. She didn't. She didn't mind Rainbow's posturing, Applejack's fresh forest smell, or even Pinkie Pie's dog-like tendencies. Things that would have had her ancestors running for the hills barely bothered her. She wasn't afraid of these girls because of their species. She was afraid because they were teenage girls. It was actually rather ridiculous when Twilight thought about it. Not just the revelation, but the whole ordeal. These girls hadn't done anything to her. Well, Sunset had, but that was her own doing. It's just— Twilight scratched the back of her head. I haven't had the best track record with girls my own age. Why's that? Sunset asked, tilting her head. Well, Twilight wrung her hands. Most girls don't like hanging out with me, or at least being nice when they do, so I don't always, trust well. Let's just say I'm nervous when interacting with girls I don't know very well. Sunset studied her before smiling sadly. Well, for what it's worth, I trust my friends with almost everything. They won't hurt you, Twilight, or at least not because they want to. The red hair put a hand to the human's shoulder. I'm sure you'll say the same thing if you hang out with them a bit. Twilight smiled softly. Yeah, I guess I think so too. That's the spirit, Sunset smiled. I'm gonna tell the others everything's fine. They're a little worried. We'll be out there when you're done, okay? Alright, Twilight nodded, and Sunset made her way back out. She then paused to look back at Twilight with a serious face. And Twilight? Yeah? Whatever those other girls said, it's a load. You got that? Oh, okay. Yeah. Sunset studied her again before smiling. Good. See you in a second. Twilight watched Sunset disappear around the corner before sighing. She looked back into the mirror to tidy herself up before she went after. Put yourself out there. Twilight turned the corner, pausing when she heard their group talking around the bench, hidden behind a cardboard stand. "Just washing up when I got in there, said she was fine." "Oh, that's good," Fluttershy spoke softly. "I was afraid we scared her." "Well, I suppose it would be rather natural for humans to be a little on edge around us," Rarity said. "We can be a tad intimidating to those who don't know us, can we?" Twilight looked through a hole in the board. All the girls were on and around the bench, Rainbow perching on the arm of it, and was looking a bit bored as Rarity, Applejack, and Sunset all took their seats. Fluttershy was floating nearby, and Pinkie, who had abandoned the toy mallet, had now taken to trying to open the bag with her teeth, looking a little haggard. "Afraid?" Rainbow asked, her large talons flexing off. "Why would you be scared of us? We're not that scary." Pinkie snarled angrily, the loud sound echoing in the theater as she transformed into a wolf again. The bag still in her maw, she started to shake it wildly like a wild animal. Whipping her head back and forth, growling, she began to slam the bag onto the ground violently, with it still in her mouth until, under the pressure, the bag ripped open, rawhide chips flying this way and that. The girls on the bench leaned back, wide-eyed as Pinkie returned to normal form, panting heavily, the empty bag fluttering from her mouth. She spat out a few stray shreds before looking around the chips on the floor. She coughed for a second before laughing a little. "Ha ha!" She jumped up, hands in the air. "I did it! I opened the bag!" Pinkie rubbed her hands together. "And to the victor goes the spoils! Pinkie, no!" Rarity leapt up and hooked her arms around the once again wolf girl in an impressive sort of full Nelson. "Do not eat food off the floor!" "Aww!" Pinkie whined in the dog-like fashion, struggling to get the broken chip remains on the floor. "But I just opened it!" "A lady does not eat off the floor," Rarity insisted, "especially in a public location such as this. Who knows what barefooted monsters have hobbled in here?" Rainbow inspected one of her bare talons before crossing her wings with a pout. But Pinkie watched, heartbroken, as an underpaid teenage employee came by with a push broom, ignoring them all the while. This time, Pinkie did just whine like a dog, almost melting through Rarity's arms in disappointment. "I'm sorry, darling, but I just had to put my hoof down," Rarity said, stopping one of her hooves on the floor for emphasis. She released the wolf, who just sat on the ground, ears dropped. "Here," Fluttershy spoke, flying back over where she had disappeared to. She produced another bag of rawhide chips from behind her back, and with a quick flick of her wrist, opened it in her first try. Holding it out, the pink wolf stared at it for a moment before jumping to her feet, human once more. "Thanks, Fluttershy," Pinkie said, taking the bag and ramming a large handful into her mouth, a few stray chips falling to the floor. "Oh, what do you want?" she asked, mouth stuffed and holding out another handful. When all her friends shook her head, Pinkie shrugged, mashing the handful into her mouth as well. Twilight put a hand to her mouth to stifle her chuckles. It seemed like these girls didn't have a mouth's bone, at least if they weren't in danger or anything. Twilight dusted off her skirt before stepping out. Put yourself out there. Thanks again for the ride, Applejack. Twilight, Sunset, Rainbow, and AJ were all piled into her family pickup, driving out of the city limits. Applejack looked into the rearview mirror before putting her eyes back on the road. "Ah, shucks, ain't no trouble there, Twilight. It's just a hot skip and a jump from my house. We're practically neighbors. In fact, when you're in my little sister's bedroom, you can see Everfree from your window." "Really?" Twilight said, surprised. "I didn't know that you were so close." "You mean you never noticed that large honking apple farm right near your community?" Rainbow asked, looking back to Twilight with a surprised amount of neck flexibility. "Oh, I never usually leave like this. Everfree Estates has most of the amenities we need to just not leave, and anything we really want can just be ordered in," Twilight shrugged. "I even go to a private school that buses us in on Monday morning and takes us home Friday afternoon. It's all human too, and just out a bit in the country for privacy." "I thought it was against the law to segregate schools," Applejack said, more curious than insulted. "It is," Sunset spoke. "They just find loopholes. Like, if the neighborhood you get your students from is primarily, let's say, harpies, then it's mostly, if not all, harpy kids. As for private schools, you just say the people you don't want to come to your school didn't make the cut." "Well, that kinda sucks," Rainbow said. "Guess Canterlot High is pretty good about that." Canterlot High was actually made with that idea in mind. It's why it's in the middle of a bunch of different districts, Sunset explained. "You really need to read the plaque on the Wonder Cult statue outside. It explains a lot more." "Pass," Rainbow grunted before looking back to Twilight. "So, this was kinda your first trip out in the real world, huh?" She smiled when Twilight nodded, ignoring the grumpy look Sunset was flashing her. "What'd you think of it?" "It's nice," Twilight started. "I saw a lot of new things and learned a lot about the city. I never knew they had to accommodate such a wide range of creature sizes." I also saw a lot of different types of monsters. There were some fawns on a bus, a scimitar, a cyclops, so... Twilight dropped off, wondering if she was prattling too much. Sounds like an adventure, Applejack laughed, turning off the busy road onto the quiet street. Oh, I also bumped into a gorgon, quite literally, outside the theater, Twilight explained, riding the bag on her lap. Didn't bump her shades off, did you? Rainbow asked, looking out her window. How did you know it's the law, Rainbow said. They have to obscure their eyes. But one goes to our school, and she wears glasses, though, like normal ones, so they work. Some of them wear contacts to cancel it, but apparently they bug your eyes or something. Twilight chuckled. I do know a thing or two about that. Well, as long as her glasses stayed on, Rainbow shrugged, she shouldn't have caused too much trouble. Well, she wasn't happy with me, Twilight said. She told me to watch where I was going. Of course, it was my first time in the city, so I was taking in the buildings and didn't see her. So she had a point. Twilight looked down at her bag, fidgeting with the zipper, as she continued conversationally. She called me a stupid piece of stock, and then her snake hairs hissed at me. Twilight yelped when the truck drove it to a stop, bracing her hands in the front seat as her seatbelt tugged around her body. The other girls grunted as they got the same treatment, Applejack forcing the truck back into the lane. Jiminy, sorry, What? Applejack whipped her head around to look at Twilight before looking back at the road. What in the hell? Twilight was still frozen, clutching the seat tightly. What? What? Rainbow shouted, practically spinning around until she was belly down in her seat. How could she say that to your face? My face? Twilight asked, looking around the truck, getting a sinking feeling in her gut, which doubled at the uneasy looks the girls shared. Twilight? Sunset started, staring at her sadly. Do you know what that means? Twilight fell silent, having no clue what it meant, and something told her she didn't want to know. Shaking her head negatively, she watched Sunset sigh. It, goes back to when humans were still considered animals, like... Sunset chewed on her cheek a moment. Like stock cattle or farm animals. Twilight puffed out her cheeks as she thought about this. Oh, yeah, Sunset mumbled. She said that to your face? In daylight? In front of people? Rainbow asked, still trying to process this information. I can't even. Don't pay any tar mind, Twilight, Applejack grunted. For every spoiled apple, there's a bushel of good. You just need to pick your way through all the bruised and wormy ones to find them. Twilight nodded as Applejack turned off the road to a large gated driveway with a 6-stone fence surrounding a large old stone chateau. That's me, Sunset said as she unbuckled herself. Opening the door, she smiled again. It was nice hanging out with you, Twilight. Yeah, we should totally do it again, Rainbow added, opening her own door. I'm good here, AJ. I can fly home from Sunset's place. Alrighty, Applejack said, looking to Twilight in the rear view again. Come on up and sit shotgun, Twi. Okay. Twilight clambered out, circling the vehicle to the front seat as Rainbow flexed her wings out and gave them a few test flaps. The force of the wind pushed out from under her wings was enough to almost launch Twilight's glasses from her face. She held onto them as Rainbow managed to leap to the top of Sunset's 10-foot stone fence, then off into the air with the help of the added height. It was rather impressive how quickly she was gone and how much lift she got. See you later, Rainbow shouted before she was high in the air and out of sight. Twilight waved to Sunset as the girls approached the gated entryway. She merely found a foothold on the lower bar and jumped over the 10-foot gate in a single jump. She landed on the other side with a thump, then she stood as if nothing odd had happened. She looked back to give the two a thumbs up, Twilight gaping at her and AJ laughing. 10 out of 10, Applejack snorted. Thank you, Sunset said, single brow raised and a smirk on her face. Twilight watched her walk for a moment, still holding the door before she climbed back inside. With her seatbelt on again, the farmer started down the road, this time forever free. So, Applejack started, looking to the girl momentarily. What's Everfree Estates like? Twilight shrugged. Not too interesting, just subdivisions and a few stores. Nothing out of the ordinary, though I suppose ordinary to you is living in a city with a lot of different creatures instead of just your own kind. There ain't too much my kind around here, Applejack said, keeping her eyes on the road. Most of them out in the country, my family that is. Not too sure we're unrelated though, not that it's all that important. Oh, why not? Twilight asked. Oh, you know, health class and all. We all got the same number, I forget, what's that thing called? Chromosomes? Yeah, that's it, Applejack nodded. Anyone can have kids with any species they want, including humans, so not like I need to find someone like me. Probably make it easier though. More in common in the way of culture, I suppose, Applejack shrugged. It's just a little too toxic here for most of them. why most of my aunts and uncles moved away. Granny's a tough old Glarn root though, and we take after her, so we're there to stay. Toxic? Twilight asked. Pollution from the city. Applejack jerked her head back from where they came. Most clans can't take absorbing that much, that includes my family. But so long as we ain't exposed for a long period or there isn't a whole lot of us in one place, we're fine. I mean, if you're used to it like me. Applejack checked her blind spot, changing into a turning lane. My aunts and uncles just left as the city started to get too big, so they can't stay more than a week here. Of course, my auntie and Uncle Orange have to be the toughest of the family to reside in the heart of Manhattan, though they do have an air purifier in their apartment. Wow, that's interesting. Do you only harvest apples on your farm? Applejack smiled. Got some animals, sheep, pigs, dogs, stuff. Mostly for wool and truffle hunting, though. Got some chickens, my dog Wayona. Lot of pets, then? Twilight smiled. Yes, sir. Applejack nodded. Of course, we need them more than just for what they produce. Why's that? Twilight questioned. To give you lots of love? Of course, but we ain't like changelings or nothing. They give off a lot of carbon dioxide. If it weren't for them, the trees could make things a little harder on us. Why would the trees make things harder for you? Well, what plants do, Twilight? Breathe in carbon dioxide, exhale oxygen. Trees suck it up. Animals just make sure there's enough to share between us. Oh, you must have a lot of trees then. Lots? Ha! Try oodles. A whole bunch, and then some. I don't know if I can count them all. Applejack chuckled, looking proud again. I can tell you all their names, though. Names? Twilight started, only to stop when Applejack put up near Everfree Estate Sentry. The lights of guard stations were on, and the street lights were just starting to activate as well. Well, here we are. I traveled to your house, but... Applejack gestured her hand for explanation, looking more sheepish than insulted. I understand, Twilight said, opening the door and hopping out. Thanks again, Applejack. Nah, don't mention it, Applejack said happily. It's what friends do. Oh, hey, Applejack smiled at Twilight. If you get a free moment, come down to the farm and I'll show you around. I'm usually there if not for school or hanging out with the others. Yeah, that sounds nice, Twilight agreed. Great, I'll message you on Facebook or something, Applejack said, putting the truck back into gear. So, guess we'll hang out again? Yeah, I'll see you soon, Twilight nodded. After closing the door, she waved, watching Applejack drive off. She stood watching the pickup disappear into the distance, hands in her pocket, heading towards the guardhouse. Twilight pushed open her door, hearing Spark starting to bite excitedly and running for her. Just as she rounded the corner, he jumped up at her excitedly. She laughed as she kicked off her shoes and put her bag away. Easy, Spike, easy. I need a minute to get settled. Twilight! Her mother hurried downstairs excitedly, a glass of wine in one hand. Oh, honey, did you have fun with your friends tonight? Yes. It was a lot of fun and they're really nice, Twilight said. She picked Spike up, laughing as he started to lick her face. Oh, that's great, Velvet smiled and lifted her glass up. I'm so happy you're starting to get more social, Twilight. Twilight Sparkle rolled her eyes. Yes, Mom, I know you are. This calls for pizza. Velvet went for the kitchen. I'll order. Twilight shook her head, following her mother into the next room, watching her take the landline from its jack in the wall. Can it be a Hawaiian pizza? Anything you want, honey, Velvet said, dialing the number. I'm just so glad you're making friends. Finally you'll have someone to hang out with at school. Oh yes, Mom didn't know. It wasn't so much that her mother wasn't racist, or as racist as others. It was more the fact that her mother and father were known to be a little overbearing. If they figured out she was leaving Everfree Estates, then they might have wanted to accompany her everywhere she went, if they even let her go at all. Yes, friends at school, Twilight managed to say without sounding suspicious. Her mother smiled back at her before talking into the phone. Twilight hugged Spike a bit closer. Sometimes, you just need to put yourself out there, and sometimes, you need to fly solo to do it.